The evening had been ordinary, or at least, that's what Elena Whitmore believed when she stepped into the master bathroom of her suburban Maplewood home. The sunlight was fading through the frosted windows, throwing pale gold onto the marble tiles. She reached for her shampoo, fingers brushing against the bottle as they had 100 times before. But something was different. It was half empty. That in itself wasn't strange. Elena had long hair, after all. But when she lifted the bottle, she noticed the faint residue clinging around the rim of the cap, the way it hadn't been properly closed. Elena was meticulous. She always wiped the cap, always sealed it tight. A small chill ran through her. She sniffed the contents. The scent was unmistakable. Lavender and honey, her signature blend that no one else in the house ever touched. Her husband, Marcus, was allergic to lavender. Her best friend, Vanessa, who had been visiting more often lately, claimed to hate floral scents. So, why did it feel like someone else had been using it? Elena brushed the thought aside at first. Maybe she was overthinking. Stress had been her constant shadow these past months. Marcus had been distant, his late nights at the firm piling up. Vanessa had been clingy, inserting herself into Elena's weekends under the guise of just checking in. But then came the next detail, a faint lipstick smear on Elena's wine glass the following evening. Not her shade, not her glass. Her instincts prickled awake. Something was wrong. That night, lying next to Marcus in their king-sized bed, Elena stared at the ceiling long after his breathing had settled into a steady rhythm. Her mind replayed the shampoo bottle, the lipstick, the odd silences between Marcus and Vanessa during their last dinner together. And deep inside, a seed of suspicion took root. The next morning, Elena went shopping, but not for groceries. Instead, she drove across town to a small electronic shop and bought something she never thought she'd need, a discreet, motion-activated security camera. She hid it in the corner of the living room, angled just enough to cover the sofa, the place where Marcus and Vanessa often sat, laughing together when they thought Elena wasn't looking. Her heart pounded as she adjusted the lens. She hated herself for doing this, but she hated the gnawing uncertainty even more. For 3 days, Elena lived her life like normal. She cooked dinner, answered work emails, smiled when Vanessa dropped by with her fake sympathy and bright red lipstick. But every night, when Marcus thought she was asleep, Elena slipped into the study and checked the recordings. The first 2 days showed nothing, just empty rooms and harmless chatter. But on the third day, Elena's world shattered. On the grainy screen, she watched as Vanessa slipped into the house while Elena was out shopping. Marcus appeared minutes later, loosening his tie, his lips curling into a smile Elena hadn't seen directed at her in years. They kissed. Elena's stomach lurched. Her hands shook so violently, she almost dropped the laptop. It wasn't just a kiss. It was hunger, betrayal, years of trust set ablaze in an instant. She slammed the laptop shut, her chest heaving. A scream rose in her throat but died before it could escape. Her best friend, her husband, her life. It had all been a lie. But Elena Whitmore wasn't going to cry. Not yet. She wiped her tears, stood tall, and whispered into the silence of her study. They think I'm blind. Let's see how blind they are when I take everything. And with that, her revenge began. Elena woke the next morning with a clarity she hadn't felt in months. The ache in her chest hadn't vanished, but it had hardened into something sharper: resolve. She wasn't going to be the tearful, discarded wife. If Marcus and Vanessa thought she'd roll over, they were about to learn how wrong they were. The first step was evidence. Not just the shaky clip from her hidden camera, but a trail that would burn them both to the ground. She started small. Elena began forgetting things at home: a silk scarf on the couch, a pair of sunglasses on the kitchen island. Whenever she returned, they were never quite where she had left them. Vanessa was sloppy, Marcus was arrogant, and Elena was patient. One afternoon, she opened the laundry basket and found a smudge of crimson lipstick on Marcus's shirt collar. The same shade she'd seen on Vanessa's lips. Elena smiled bitterly. Evidence number one. Next came the receipts. Marcus was a creature of habit. He always used his shared credit card for business dinners, leaving the monthly statements for Elena to file away. She combed through the transactions with the precision of a detective. There it was, a hotel charge, a jewelry store, a five-star restaurant in Midtown, all on nights he had claimed to be working late. Elena printed the statements, highlighting each betrayal in neon yellow. Evidence number 2. But she wasn't done. Not even close. She upgraded her camera system, placing another hidden lens in the bedroom, angled to capture shadows more than faces. She set a voice recorder beneath the sofa cushions. Marcus had no idea that every whispered word was being cataloged, every stolen touch immortalized in digital memory. And as the evidence piled up, so did Elena's fury. At the same time, she crafted her mask. Around Marcus, she remained the dutiful wife, smiling faintly, asking about his day, folding his shirts with steady hands. Around Vanessa, she feigned ignorance, listening to her best friend chatter about nonsense while resisting the urge to claw the smug grin off her face. It was torture, but necessary, because Elena wasn't after confrontation. She was after devastation. Her chance arrived sooner than expected. 2 weeks later, Elena overheard Marcus on the phone in his office. His voice was low, but the words carried through the half-open door. "She's clueless, babe. Don't worry. After the firm's gala, we'll have enough to make the move official." Elena froze. The gala, a grand, annual event where Marcus would be recognized for his partnership deal. Every client, every investor, every influential family in Maplewood would be there. If Marcus and Vanessa wanted to make a move, Elena would make hers first. She didn't just want them caught. She wanted them ruined. So Elena began to plan. She met discreetly with a lawyer, carefully presenting her growing mountain of evidence. The lawyer's brows lifted higher with each document, each photo, each recording. By the end, he said just 6 words that made Elena's pulse race. "You're going to own everything." The stage was set, but Elena didn't want to strike in private. She wanted Marcus and Vanessa to choke on their own arrogance in front of the very people whose respect they craved most. The Maplewood Grand Hotel, the firm's gala, the perfect stage for betrayal. And Elena was ready to play her part. The Maplewood Grand glittered like a promise that night, all chandeliers and polished marble, a cathedral for deal-makers and those who wanted to be seen near them. Elena had worn the dress Marcus loved on her, a midnight blue silk gown that caught the light when she moved. Her hair was up in a careful knot, her makeup was measured, an armor of poise. Every inch of her looked like the woman who belonged beside Marcus at society's important moments. That was the point. Inside, the guests flowed like a silvered river. Men in tuxes clasped hands with developers and philanthropists. Women in couture laughed in small, perfect clusters. Marcus, when Elena found him, was already radiant with that easy charm that had coaxed investors out of pockets for years. He moved through the room with the practiced grace of a man who believed his life was an unassailable script. At his side, Vanessa, resplendent in scarlet, glowed as if she had been born for this role. She laughed at his jokes, leaning in a way Elena recognized from screen captures and private recordings. Privileged, intimate, sure. Elena greeted a few people and allowed herself to be introduced as Marcus's wife. She took the compliments with a pale smile and a cooling sense of the stage. The gala followed its ritual, applause for the honorees, a speech stitched with numbers and promises, a charity auction that raised more than a month's payroll for some cause. Always the charitable veneer that kept Maplewood's crowd feeling both superior and benevolent. When the MC announced the evening's highlight, Marcus's recognition for closing a major partnership, he rose to thunderous applause. Elena watched him mount the dais, heard the lauding applause like a metronome, ticking toward revelation. She felt neither joy nor bitterness as he began his speech. Instead, she felt a surgeon's calm. He talked about trust and teamwork, how a leader's strength is built on the people who back him. He thanked his colleagues and his family, nodding perfunctorily toward Elena without feeling it. Vanessa sat front row, hands clasped, a smile that looked practiced enough to be permanent. When he finished, the room stood and he bowed. That was Elena's cue. She moved forward, slowly enough to be noticed, deliberate enough to be dramatic, and when she reached the dais, the room's murmur swelled into a startled hush. Marcus's smile flickered, then tightened. Vanessa's color dulled in the way a face drains of blood when a winter storm arrives without warning. "Excuse me," Elena said, and the microphone's feedback made her voice crystal clear. "I need to say something." There were a few awkward chuckles. Someone high in the crowd tried to make a joke to ease the moment, but Elena's expression stopped laughter before it could be borne. She opened the small leather folio she had brought. Inside were printed bank statements, hotel receipts, photos, and a small USB drive. "For years," she said evenly, "I have been the woman behind some of Marcus Cartwright's success. I built the creative identity for his firm. I wrote the speeches you applauded tonight. I edited proposals that won contracts. I was told that this was fine, that marriage was a partnership where one gives and the other takes. I accepted that. But I did not accept betrayal." She laid the photos on the lectern and clicked the drive into the podium's port. A moment later, the big screen behind Marcus flickered, not with the gala's charity logo, but with a montage of images and short video clips. Receipts showing hotel charges on nights marked work, hotel room photos, images of a woman, Vanessa, arriving at Marcus's condo, a clip of their kiss from Elena's camera. The screen rolled the bank transactions, the transfers to an account with an address that did not belong to their home. The gallery of evidence played like a slideshow for the room's moral calculus. There was a gasp, like a collective intake of breath, that swelled and then stuttered into silence. Cameras swung. Conversations clipped to threads. The MC's smile frozen into an expression of confusion. Marcus stood, face ashen, scrambling for words that did not exist for him anymore. Vanessa covered her mouth with a gloved hand and sat very still, as if petrified by the sudden exposure. A murmur moved through the crowd, shock, then curiosity, then the sharp pings of scandal taking root. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked toward the event organizer, who was already whispering, "We should cut this, now." But Elena continued, unruffled. "You should know," she said, "that there is more." She handed a marked stack of documents to the gala's chairperson. Ledger pages, a contract canceled mid-signature, an invoice for an Italian sofa delivered to an address on the riverfront, a luxe condo Marcus had never once mentioned at home. "My husband has been siphoning company funds and using them to fund his life with this woman." A few guests reached for their phones, faces pale in the blue glow. The charity's board members exchanged glances, their social investments suddenly swollen with liability. The firm's PR director stumbled forward, panic writ in the nervous staccato of his hands. "Grant, no," Marcus tried to speak then. He moved as if on skates, losing balance with every word. "Elena, this isn't," he began. "This is," Elena said, and she played the audio she had recorded of him discussing the shared account and the move becoming official. The words filled the room in his own voice. The sound lines was the most damning punctuation. People who had known Marcus for years heard the betrayal in his own tone. Within minutes, the event organizer called security, not to remove Elena, but to discreetly escort Marcus and Vanessa from the platform while the board convened in rapid crisis. Whispers chased them out, some of pity, most of scorn. Reporters pressed microphones into the faces of people who had once clinked champagne with Marcus until the hotel's PR team locked the ballroom doors and draped a hush over what had been a glittering celebration. By the time Elena walked out into the cold night air, the gala had fallen into a different orbit. Maplewood's elite would gossip for months. Board members would call lawyers quietly. The charity's donors would pull pledges. Elena walked home alone, but she felt lighter than she had in years. Her revenge had dismantled the mask. The firm's support structure began to wobble. The next morning, the story cracked like ice on a winter pond. Journalists tracked the scandal. The firm issued a careful statement about internal matters. But evidence is a stubborn thing. A bank's compliance officer called Marcus's firm within 48 hours. Transactions flagged. anomalies reported. The condo where Vanessa had been registered received a notice from the delivery company. The furnishings were returned to sender pending inquiry. Vanessa made 3 frantic phone calls, then a public declaration that she had been naive, that she had been misled. Marcus's calls went unanswered. A board meeting, hastily convened, suspended him pending an internal audit. A law firm reached out to Elena, not only with sympathy but with an offer. "We can pursue this financially on your behalf." Exposed and unmoored, Marcus stumbled through apologies that no longer had breath. Vanessa retreated to a friend's apartment uptown and then, to the rumor mill's delight, was arrested in a separate city for an unrelated charge, an open warrant Elena had quietly shared with someone on her list. It was not vindictive cruelty that guided Elena. She had sought the truth and let lawful consequences follow. By the time the dust settled, the firm's clients began to resign quietly, insurance providers requested audits, and potential partnerships evaporated into niceties and silence. Marcus's name, once a talisman in Maplewood's rooms, became a cautionary tale. Elena's evidence had done what whispered resentment never could. It had made betrayal a public currency, and in that coin, her husband had been bankrupt. The storm Marcus had tried to ride out turned into a hurricane he could not control. Within a week of the gala, his face was splashed across every local news outlet. Rising partners suspended amid allegations of fraud and infidelity. His firm, once celebrated for its rapid growth, now fumbled under the weight of scandal. Elena didn't watch the coverage with glee. She watched with a calm detachment, like someone studying whether she had already prepared for. Each headline was another reminder. Justice wasn't always loud, it was thorough. Vanessa, the best friend, who had once filled Elena's weekends with false laughter, tried calling. Once, twice, then 10 times in a single night. Elena didn't answer. She didn't need to. Vanessa's social pages vanished, her smiling photos erased as if she were trying to scrub herself from the public memory. Rumors spread that she had been cut off by her family, abandoned by her circle, and left struggling with debts Marcus had promised to pay. Elena almost pitied her. Almost. Marcus, on the other hand, spiraled. He sent Elena flowers, apologies scribbled on cards that arrived wilting in vases. He left voicemails that swung between rage and begging. One message wept, "I made a mistake, Lena. We can fix this. Don't destroy me." Another snarled, "You'll regret humiliating me. You'll regret this." But Elena didn't regret anything. She had already moved forward. Her lawyer, armed with the arsenal of evidence, filed for divorce with precision. The court saw the recordings, the financial trails, the receipts. Marcus's protests died in his throat when the judge raised an eyebrow at his own recorded words. Within months, Elena was granted not only freedom but a generous settlement, bolstered by the firm's desperate desire to keep further details from leaking into the press. The house that had once felt like a prison was hers outright. The accounts Marcus had hidden were turned over in part of restitution. Elena didn't waste time redecorating or tearing down walls. Instead, she sold it all. Every tainted room, every memory-soaked hallway, and walked away with boxes of what mattered. Her daughter's sketches, her grandfather's watch, her mother's silver locket. She bought a cabin instead. It sat at the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where the pines bent in the wind and mornings arrived with a mist that rolled like quiet waves. The cabin wasn't large, but it was hers, untouched by deceit. The first night she slept there, wrapped in a quilt with the windows cracked open, Elena felt something she hadn't in years: peace. But revenge wasn't just about peace. It was about rebirth. She let her hair down, literally. After years of careful styling for Marcus's tastes, she walked into a small-town salon and asked for something new. The stylist, a woman with warm eyes and steady hands, cut Elena's hair into a sleek, shoulder-length bob, letting the ends curl naturally. When the cape was removed and Elena met her reflection, she smiled. She looked like herself again, stronger, freer, untamed. Her days took on rhythm. Morning hikes through trails where deer startled and birds sang. Afternoons writing, something she had always loved but buried beneath Marcus's demands. Evenings with neighbors who didn't care about galas or scandals but shared bread, wine, and laughter by firelight. Every so often, she received letters from her old life. A law firm updating her on the firm's collapse. A friend whispering that Vanessa had left town in disgrace. News that Marcus, stripped of his position and shunned by his peers, had fled Maplewood entirely. Elena kept those letters in a drawer. She didn't reread them often because she no longer needed to. Her revenge was never about destroying Marcus or Vanessa completely. It was about reclaiming herself, about proving that betrayal didn't break her, it forged her. One crisp autumn evening, Elena stood outside her cabin, wrapped in a shawl as the sun dipped below the ridge. The sky flamed orange and violet, and for the first time in years, she breathed deeply, without the weight of suspicion or fear. Her phone buzzed. A message from a local community center. "Would you like to teach a workshop? Writing for healing." Elena smiled. Yes, she thought. Yes, I would. Because healing was the truest revenge of all.